The restaurant was alive with chatter that night, a symphony of clinking glasses and soft laughter that filled the elegant space. Nestled in an alcove of luxury, patrons basked in the affair of high society, oblivious to the whirlwinds of life that existed beyond the restaurant's walls. Each guest carried the air of importance, dressed in polished suits and flowing gowns, savoring exquisite meals, savoring their moment in the spotlight. At the heart of it all sat Marcus Preston, the kind of man one would hardly notice at first glance. Dressed in a simple black blazer over a crisp white shirt, he looked unassuming, more fit for a simple dinner than any gathering of power players. But there was an undeniable confidence in his posture, a rhythmic laughter that danced through the conversation with his colleagues, hinting at stories untold, a life lived within the corridors of influence. Enter Kyle, the young waiter, freshly scrubbed and poorly matched for the arena of grandeur. To him, Marcus was just another guest, a name in a vast sea of customers passing through his life in the high-end restaurant. Kyle approached with the air of superiority that satisfied his assumptions. "Good evening. I hope you're all enjoying your meal. The steak here is quite impressive. I'd recommend it to anyone who's not afraid to indulge." He paused, surveying the table with a smirk before landing his gaze on Marcus. "But of course, you look more like a salad guy. No offense, sir." The comment teetered on the edge of ridicule, hanging in the air, pregnant with tension. No laughter erupted, and the other guests glanced around, silently gauging the situation. Marcus remained calm, his expression unchanging, allowing the moment to pulse like an unseen current. Unbeknownst to Kyle, the man he'd just belittled was no ordinary diner. He was the founder of a billion-dollar tech empire, known to influence markets and shape futures, a titan in his field. Kyle, oblivious to the storm he'd just brewed, turned away, preening in the satisfaction of what he thought was a clever jest. He moved around the table, delivering drinks and jotting down orders, secure in his ignorance, unaware of the shift that had just occurred in the atmosphere. The laughter had faded, and there was a tangible unease that replaced it, like a storm cloud darkening the summer sky. As he worked, Kyle continued to wear the mask of confidence, unaware that the name Marcus Preston was about to ripple through the fabric of the restaurant's evening. Moments later, when Marcus stood to settle the bill, the host's sudden rush of recognition shocked Kyle into stillness. "Mr. Preston," the host exclaimed, his voice tinged with awe and reverence that made Kyle's stomach twist into knots. Frozen, Kyle turned just in time to see Marcus produce a sleek black credit card, the kind that dripped with privilege and power, and in that moment, the gray film of reality stripped away Kyle's arrogance, revealing the depths of his ignorance. He was no longer the unflappable waiter who had dismissed this man. He was a mere cog in a vast machinery he barely understood. Suddenly, whispers cascaded through the restaurant like ripples in water. Kyle's heart raced as comprehension broke over him like waves crashing against the shores of his delusions. "You look more like a salad guy," his mind echoed with the sting of his words, each replay sharper than the last. Embarrassment roared through him, a red tide that painted the entire restaurant in hues of judgment. Head low, Kyle felt the eyes of the patrons, a spotlight of derision focused on him. There was no retreating from the damage he had done, no way to restore the moment's dignity. Every second felt like an eternity as he stood, rooted in shame, the cacophony of the dining room fading into a hush that echoed through his mind. After acknowledging the host, Marcus disappeared through the doors, leaving Kyle to face the fallout of his assumptions. The restaurant's pulse slowed. Laughter faded to murmurs. Diners began exchanging knowing glances. Kyle's world spun, heavy with regret. The weight of his arrogance felt oppressive as a veil pulled tight around him. His manager, Andrew, approached, urgency flickering in his eyes. "You know who that was, right?" Andrew's tone was flat but laced with disappointment. Kyle nodded, the truth slicing through his pride. He had misjudged not just a guest but a monument of influence whose shadow stretched wide across the industry. "You embarrassed yourself," Andrew continued, his voice stark as it reverberated through Kyle's ears. "More importantly, you embarrassed the restaurant. That isn't a joke, it's a failing of respect, and now the whole room knows it." Kyle stood there mute, the implications of Andrew's words weighing him down like an anchor dragging him deeper into despair. The mistake had been made, not just a slip of tongue, but a fracture that would take more than a simple apology to mend. He could only bow his head in the shadow of his failure, feeling the burden of expectation slip from his grasp. As he wrapped up his evening, Kyle's thoughts turned relentlessly inward, replaying the night's events. He had let assumptions guide him, allowing blind judgment to expose his deep-seated biases. He'd been arrogant, dismissing a man of substance without a second thought. The next shift loomed before him, thick with the bitterness of regret, yet Kyle knew this couldn't be the end. It was the inception of a journey, a confrontation with pride that demanded far more than a hasty apology. Tomorrow would come, and with it, the weight of responsibility to change. The morning sun would herald a new chance to approach the world with clarity, free from the shackles of preconceived notions. Kyle exhaled, accepting the truth. He needed to find Marcus again and face the repercussions of his actions. Redemption beckoned him, and he was ready to confront the shadows he'd cast within himself. As Kyle closed the door to the restaurant behind him, the weight of the evening pressed heavily on his chest. The sting of embarrassment still lingered, but beneath it all lay a flicker of determination. He couldn't let this moment define him. It had to spark a change. The thought of Marcus Preston haunted him as he drifted through the streets of Nashville, the city alive and oblivious to his turmoil. The following day, in the hushed reflection of his small apartment, Kyle pondered how he could make amends. He needed to face Marcus, to apologize with the sincerity that had been absent the night before. But how? The thought of confronting someone of Marcus's stature intimidated him. The looming question echoed in his mind. How could he possibly get a chance to explain himself? As he tossed and turned through the night, an idea blossomed. If Marcus frequented the restaurant, perhaps he could catch him again. This was a chance to turn his shame into something constructive, to show he was willing to change. He couldn't allow the fear of embarrassment to hold him back. He had to seize this opportunity. Kyle's shift began in a haze of nervous anticipation. He kept glancing at the door, his heart racing with each new arrival. His co-workers chatted amiably, but he felt worlds apart from their nonchalance. The restaurant was as lively as the evening before, diners arriving and settling into their plush seats, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath Kyle's facade. Finally, just as he had half dared to hope, Marcus walked in. He strode across the room, confidence radiating off him like the warm glow of the chandeliers above. Kyle's heart quickened, a cacophony of anxiety and determination colliding within him. Was he really ready for this? Taking a deep breath, Kyle approached Marcus's table, hands clammy and heart pounding in his ears. "Mr. Preston," he managed, his voice steadying with resolve, "I need to talk to you." Marcus looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his features, but it transformed quickly into a warm, patient smile. "Kyle, isn't it? From the restaurant?" "Yes," Kyle said, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. "I want to apologize for the way I treated you last time you were here. My comment was out of line and uncalled for." There was a pause as Marcus considered the words. He held Kyle's gaze, an unwavering calm radiating from him. "I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me," Marcus replied, his tone even and sincere. "It takes courage to address a mistake like that." Kyle swallowed hard, feeling the deep truth of Marcus's statement. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about it," he continued, his words flowing more freely now, fueled by the urgency of his regret. "I realized I was quick to judge you based solely on your appearance, and that's not how I want to see the world anymore. I want to change." For a moment, silence enveloped them. A small wave of understanding seemed to pass between them. "It's easy to fall into that trap," Marcus replied softly, his expression shifting to one that reflected empathy. "We all have biases that we may not be aware of. Recognizing them is the first step." Kyle nodded, grateful for Marcus's kindness. "Thank you for understanding. I really do want to do better, for myself and those around me." Marcus smiled gently, the warm light of the restaurant reflecting in his eyes. "That's all anyone can ask for. Just remember, change takes time, but you've made the right choice. Keep pushing yourself to see beyond the surface." Feeling a sense of relief wash over him, Kyle took a deep breath. "I will. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk. I won't take this lightly." As Kyle walked back to the kitchen, he felt lighter than he had in days. The apology was a small victory, but it was a step in the right direction. His heart still raced, but it was now filled with a sense of hope instead of despair. Days turned into weeks, and though the sting of embarrassment lingered, Kyle found himself encountering a newfound awareness. He focused intently on his interactions, striving to treat every guest with the respect Marcus had discussed. No longer did he allow assumptions to cloud his judgment. Instead, he engaged in conversations, learned stories, and recognized the humanity of everyone who entered the restaurant, a perspective he'd long overlooked. This shift didn't go unnoticed by his colleagues. They remarked on his changed demeanor, how he listened more, laughed more, and offered kindness not just to the affluent patrons but to every diner, regardless of their attire or status. As the weeks passed, Kyle felt the bonds within the restaurant grow stronger. They all became a part of a shared humanity that he had previously missed. But even as these changes took root, the memory of his encounter with Marcus stayed with him, a constant reminder of his past mistakes. He remained determined to better himself each day, seeking opportunities to learn from others around him and grow beyond the confines of his old perceptions. One evening, as Kyle finished the last of his shift, he caught sight of Marcus entering the restaurant again. This time, instead of dread filling him, it sparked excitement. It was a chance to show Marcus the fruits of his efforts. Would he see the difference? Would Marcus understand that Kyle was taking his words to heart? With his pulse racing slightly, Kyle approached Marcus's table, ready to engage, ready to showcase the evolution of his character. But this time, as he approached, there was an unfamiliar other feeling nagging at him, a sense of uncertainty. What if Marcus hadn't noticed any changes? What if he still saw Kyle as that arrogant waiter from before? The moment hung in the air as Marcus looked up, his smile welcoming yet impartial. "Good evening, Kyle. How are you?" Kyle took a breath, determined to rise above the fears that bled within him. "I'm doing well, Mr. Preston. Thank you for asking. I wanted to let you know that I've been working on being more mindful of my assumptions. I've learned so much since our last encounter." Marcus's eyes held steady, as if he was assessing Kyle's sincerity. "That's great to hear," he said slowly, his voice measured. "It takes time to understand biases and truly change the way we perceive the world." Kyle nodded vigorously, filled with passion. "I appreciate your guidance more than you know. It's incredible how much it's opened my eyes to the stories behind every person, behind every face, jacket, and handbag." As he spoke, he noticed Marcus's expression shift. There was a glimmer of recognition, as if he saw a reflection of his own journey toward understanding in Kyle's words. "You're on the right path," Marcus said, his tone softer. "Just keep at it. The journey of personal growth is continuous." As the conversation unfolded, Kyle felt a warmth of camaraderie settle and grow between them. There was no longer an air of superiority on either side. What existed instead was the mutual respect that came from shared understanding. And in that moment, Kyle understood that this wasn't just about gaining acceptance from a powerful figure. It was about transforming himself for the better. It was about recognizing the worth in everyone around him, every step of the way toward his ongoing journey of redemption and growth. The future stretched ahead, and with each interaction, each lesson, he felt himself carving out a new narrative for his life, one marked by empathy and understanding. It was just the beginning, but he was ready for the journey that lay ahead. The restaurant buzzed with its usual energy, the soft murmurs of laughter and the clink of cutlery creating a comforting backdrop against Kyle's newfound resolve. Each day brought additional opportunities for him to demonstrate the change he was committed to making. He poured his heart into every interaction, determined to connect with the diverse blend of guests who graced the restaurant. It felt exhilarating to escape the confines of past assumptions, diving into the threads of lives that were unlike his own. As time passed, his confidence burgeoned not only in his role as a waiter, but also within himself. Each smile exchanged, every heartfelt conversation held, reminded him of the power of empathy. He began to see beauty in the tapestry of stories woven through the patrons he served, each person representing a unique narrative worthy of respect and understanding. That evening, the restaurant was particularly full, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow over the booths. Kyle moved deftly from table to table, embodying the kind of service he wished he had offered Marcus in that fateful moment weeks prior. He listened intently to guest stories, laughter spilling out like the wine from a newly opened bottle, and he felt an undeniable connection growing with every passing shift. His colleagues noticed too. They began to respond in kind, creating a vibrant atmosphere that pulsed with life. As dinner service wound down, Kyle spotted Marcus entering the restaurant. His heart raced, not from anxiety, but with anticipation. He was eager to showcase how truly transformative this experience had been for him. Marcus had become a symbol of the change Kyle wanted to embrace, a reminder of the potential for growth that lay within every single interaction. He approached Marcus's table with a genuine smile, a departure from nervous hesitance of their previous encounters. "Good evening, Mr. Preston," he greeted, his voice steady, brimming with sincerity. "It's great to see you here again." Marcus's eyes lit up, his smile warm. "Good to see you too, Kyle. How's everything going?" "I've been learning to listen better," Kyle replied, a glimmer of passion igniting within him. "I've been focusing on understanding the people I serve, not just taking their orders. It's amazing how much more rewarding it feels." Marcus leaned in slightly, genuinely intrigued. "That's fantastic. It's important to see beyond the surface. What has shaped this change for you?" It felt right to share his journey, framing the story not merely as a series of events, but as a significant lesson that had altered his perspective. "Reflecting on my actions that night has opened my eyes. I realized how I'd let my biases steer my judgments. I had this mental checklist of who deserved respect based on appearances, and I want to change that, not just for the sake of work but in life." The earnestness in Kyle's voice resonated with Marcus, who nodded thoughtfully. "That's a powerful realization. The world is full of complex stories, and we often don't know the struggles someone might face." As they spoke, Kyle was immersed in a conversation where walls melted away, replaced by authentic connection. His commitment to growth was palpable, and he sensed Marcus's approval through the nods of understanding that punctuated their dialogue. But just as their conversation delved deeper, a sudden ruckus emerged from a nearby table, pulling their focus momentarily. A couple was engaged in a heated argument, voices rising, starkly contrasting the ambience of the restaurant. Kyle's heart sank. He didn't want this distraction to overshadow the progress he had made with Marcus. "Happens more often than you'd think," Marcus observed, his tone unperturbed as he glanced over. "People carry emotions with them that can sometimes spill into public spaces." Kyle watched the scene unfold, feeling a knot form in his stomach. The couple's shouting became more intense, a mix of hurt and frustration echoing around the elegant surroundings. He felt compelled to intervene, drawn by the very lessons he had learned since his encounter with Marcus. "I think I should check on them," Kyle said, glancing toward the disturbance, feeling a surge of responsibility. Marcus regarded him, eyes glinting with appreciation for Kyle's desire to connect. "That's brave. Go ahead." Gathering his courage, Kyle approached the couple, his heart racing as he stepped lightly into the tumultuous exchange. "Excuse me," he interjected gently, raising his hands in a gesture of calm. "Is everything okay? Can I help with anything?" The man paused, eyebrows drawn, surprise washing over his expression. "What's it to you?" "I just want to make sure you both are all right," Kyle replied, his voice steady and soft. "No one should have to feel uncomfortable when they're out for dinner. I'm here to help." The woman took a sharp breath, her eyes darting between Kyle and the man beside her. We're frustrated," she admitted, her voice quavering as colors of vulnerability seeped through her anger. Kyle sensed the turmoil they were entrenched in and chose to listen. "I understand. Sometimes venting can help. If you'd like, I can get you both some water, or we can chat it out. Whatever you need." After a moment of tentative silence, the man exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders unwinding ever so slightly. "Water's fine." Kyle nodded, his heart buoyed by the shift in energy. "I'll be right back." He retreated to gather the water, his legs trembling with the adrenaline of stepping beyond his comfort zone. As he returned, he noticed Marcus watching intently, an approving smile lingering on his lips. Kyle set the glasses before the couple, the tension dissipating like steam from a pot. "Take your time," he said softly, retreating just enough to let them find their footing. In that moment, Kyle recognized the depth of connection he longed for, not just between himself and individual guests, but within each human experience. Every person carried a story, a burden, a joy, and he could not allow assumptions to shape those narratives anymore. After ensuring the couple felt more at ease, Kyle returned to Marcus, who stood there, pride shimmering in his eyes. "You handled that well," Marcus commented, genuine admiration resonating with his words. Listening to them instead of dismissing their emotions speaks volumes. "Thank you, Mr. Preston. I've learned to see the stories behind the faces. Every table has its own narrative, and I want to be a part of that." Their conversation continued, buoyed by a newfound understanding, both of Kyle's growth and the broader lessons he was uncovering as he navigated the intricacies of human connection. That night was a turning point, and Kyle felt the ground shifting beneath him, revealing a future rich with possibilities. As the evening wore on, the couple eventually left, having reached a resolution, and Kyle couldn't help but feel the warmth of fulfillment radiating from within. In that moment, he understood he was no longer just a waiter serving meals, but a participant in a community of human stories, each as important as the last. With each passing interaction, he knew he was bettering himself, and each lesson redefined his identity. Tomorrow would bring new guests and new opportunities, and Kyle was ready to embrace them. The journey of discovery had only just begun, and he could see the blank canvas of his evolving narrative stretching out before him, vivid, dynamic, and waiting to be painted with the hues of connection, understanding, and empathy. As the restaurant emptied and the echoes of laughter faded into the night, Kyle sat at the counter, his heart still racing from the earlier encounter. It had been a night unlike any other, bursting with the promise of connection and understanding. He felt invigorated, fueled by the realization that each interaction held the potential to inspire change, not just in himself, but in those around him too. A soft laugh from one of his colleagues pulled him from his thoughts. Cynthia, a seasoned waitress with a sharp wit and enormous heart, leaned against the counter with a knowing smile. "You did good tonight, Kyle. I saw you handling that couple. You've come a long way." "Thanks, Cynthia," Kyle replied, a mix of pride and humility washing over him. "It feels different somehow. Not just serving food, but actually connecting with people. It's powerful." Cynthia nodded, her expression turning serious. "That's the magic of this job. We're not just waitstaff, we're a part of the community fabric. You're starting to see that, and it changes everything." Kyle reflected on her words as he helped clean the tables. As dawn approached, he felt a profound sense of belonging within the restaurant, a departure from the feelings of isolation and self-doubt he had battled for so long. His journey had just begun, and he felt an overwhelming motivation to continue embracing the lessons he learned. In the following weeks, Kyle committed to this newfound approach wholeheartedly. Each shift became an exploration of human narratives, a tapestry woven from shared experiences. He engaged with every patron, eager to hear their stories, from business travelers sharing tales of home to locals celebrating special occasions. Every interaction opened a door to a deeper understanding of the complexities that shaped their lives. The connection he sought was blossoming not only between patrons, but also among his co-workers. He found himself surrounded by a support network that encouraged self-discovery and growth. There were impromptu brainstorming sessions about how to improve the restaurant's atmosphere, and laughter echoed through the staff breaks, wrapping Kyle in a sense of warmth he had long desired. One evening, as the restaurant buzzed with the clang of dishes and spirited conversation, Kyle spotted Marcus once again entering the establishment. This time his visit felt different. It wasn't just a chance encounter, but a reunion of sorts. Kyle walked over, a bright smile on his face, welcoming the opportunity to share how the past weeks had impacted him. "Mr. Preston," Kyle greeted, genuine enthusiasm lighting his eyes. "I've been looking forward to seeing you again. I wanted to tell you about everything I've experienced since last time." Marcus's smile widened, filled with an encouraging flair, as he gestured Kyle to join him at the table. "I'd love to hear about it, Kyle. Tell me what you've learned." With a renewed sense of confidence, Kyle shared his journey, how he had shifted his mentality from making judgments to embracing open-mindedness. He recounted the meaningful conversations with guests that prompted reflections on their unique realities. "I think I've finally begun to understand how important it is to see beyond the surface," Kyle said, his voice filled with sincerity. "People appreciate it when you take the time to listen to their stories. It's changed how I view my role here, and honestly, it's changed me." Marcus listened intently, a gleam of pride shimmering in his eyes. "It sounds like you've made significant strides, Kyle. The power of empathy can transform not just our relationships with others, but our relationships with ourselves as well. It's a beautiful thing when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable." Just then, a commotion erupted from the entrance, drawing Marcus's attention. A family rushed in, their faces painted with excitement. "We made it. We thought we were going to be late," the mother exclaimed, leading her children toward the front. "Looks like I'm not the only one filled with enthusiasm tonight," Kyle remarked, observing the vibrant energy radiating from the family. He felt compelled to meet their excitement, and as he walked over, he engaged them with a bright smile, welcoming them with open arms. "Welcome. I hope you're ready for a great meal. Can I start you off with some drinks?" As the family settled in, Kyle delighted in their laughter, and every story shared added another layer to his experience. It was moments like these that made the late shifts worthwhile, the chaos, the noise, the joy. In that instant, he recognized that this was what he had yearned for all along, a place where he could contribute to something more significant than himself, where every interaction held the potential for something beautiful. And as the night wore on, a wave of familiarity overcame him. It wasn't merely about serving food or filling tables. It was about creating environments where stories could unfold, where hearts could connect, and where life could be celebrated in all its chaos. As Kyle cleared the used plates from a nearby table, he caught Marcus's gaze once more. There was an unspoken understanding between them, forged through their shared experiences. In a fleeting moment, Kyle realized this restaurant had become a catalyst for transformation, not just in him but within the community as a whole. Feeling a surge of gratitude, Kyle approached Marcus again, his heart filled with conviction. "Thank you for inspiring me, Mr. Preston. You've opened my eyes to the richness of every human connection, and I finally feel like I'm finding my place in all of this." "Remember, Kyle," Marcus replied, his voice full of warmth, "this journey of growth and understanding never truly ends. Every table you serve represents an opportunity, and you will continue to evolve with each story shared." With a newfound sense of purpose, Kyle felt ready to embrace the future with open arms, eager to create more bonds and delve deeper into the myriad of experiences life had to offer. He had learned the value of understanding, the beauty of a shared narrative, and above all, the importance of compassion toward every soul wandering through his life. As he took a moment for himself amidst the hustle and bustle, Kyle breathed deeply, absorbing the vibrant atmosphere around him. This was his moment, one he had crafted through determination and growth. He may not have known what the future held, but one thing was certain: he was ready to step into it, one connection at a time. With that intent, he welcomed the next wave of guests, eager to uncover the stories that awaited him, ready to embrace the journey ahead. In his heart, he knew he was shaping a narrative worth telling, a narrative rooted in understanding, empathy, and unyielding connection. And so, with each new day ahead, Kyle stepped forward into the vibrant tapestry that life had to offer, a world of stories waiting to unfold.